What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Simply P back again with another daily dose. So y'all know I made the credit video yesterday or the other day, depending on when you're watching this. But my guy Stevie J, called me and he had some good, tips for me. Now he's the one who really taught me a lot about credit and done a lot of things. So Steve, man, I want you to share your story with them and man, kind of just tell me what you was talking about after you watched my first video about how to build your credit.
So yeah, PJ and I've been talking about credit for years now. He knows the journey I've taken in the credit game.
Yeah.
So my first experience with credit, most like a lot of people, I remember being 18 or 19 years old. I was going to school up in Duluth. There was a girl I know who was pretty attractive that worked at a Kohl's.
Yep.
I went to visit her and she said, "Sign up for a Kohl's card, save $10." I'm like, all right.
Right.
I threw my social security number on there, had a Kohl's card. That was my first credit experience. Had no idea what I was doing. Had no idea how that would impact me.
Right.
Years later, I opened up a couple more credit cards. I knew enough to be dangerous with credit card, which was the scary part, and that's one of the things I talked to PJ about is once you start to figure out more about credit and that score does start to build, they start to trust you with a lot of money that not everyone should have.
Right.
And so I had a daughter when I was young, and my ex at the time, her mother. She wasn't working at the time. She was still going to school.
Right.
I was barely working. I was finishing up school. I had decent credit, enough that they were giving me the big limits. And then I was playing the balance transfer game. I would open one credit card to pay off the next. And that's a downward spiral too.
Right.
I was avoiding paying interest for a long time. But next thing you know it, without me even realizing, here I was not making very good money. And I had close to $30,000 in credit card debt.
30,000. We all got that story, man.
When you're hacking away at that minimum payment and that's all you can afford and the credit's still going up, it hurts and you think that you can get in a deep hole.
Right.
Where you almost wish you would have never had credit to begin with.
Yeah.
So
okay, you get the debt and then how do you get out of that hole? How do you get out of that hole? Because I never was in that hole. I just didn't have no credit. You were in a hole. So
you got to change your mindset. You got to really start hacking away. You got to organize. You got to consolidate if you can. You got to figure out which credit cards have the highest APR. Figure out which ones you're paying the most interest on. Pay those off immediately. If you have credit card debt, I don't care what you think you're saving for. If you're trying to invest in the stock market, if you're saving for a rainy day fund, get rid of all of that. Pay off your credit card debt.
Right.
You will never get the kind of interest on a financial advisor. If you told me you could guarantee me 25% interest rate, I'd give you all the money I got.
Right.
That's what credit cards are getting off you. 25%, 20%.
Killing you.
You can't win if you're paying credit card debt.
They're killing you. They're killing you guys.
Never pay interest on the credit cards.
Never pay interest. So, tell me about, I talked about getting a secure card, and then as your credit builds, he told me one thing that you kind of warn you guys to beware of. So, tell them about that.
Once that credit starts appearing, all of a sudden you're on the map, you have credit, you're going to start getting mail offers. The credit card mailers.
Right.
They're going to start flooding in. Capital One, get our credit card. First Bank of Delaware, places you've never even heard of, are going to start sending you information. They're going to offer you credit cards, and you're not going to know that these credit cards aren't great. They're not here to help you.
Right.
Some of them are even going to have annual fees.
Right.
You never want to pay an annual fee on a credit card. There's a big difference between an annual fee and a secured credit card. The secured credit card, that money is still yours. It's in your account. You get that back once you prove your credit worthiness.
Right.
You should never pay an annual fee on a credit card until you realize what those benefits are. I pay annual fees on credit cards every year, but they provide benefits to me that are above and beyond. And I'm not in the credit building phase anymore.
Right.
When you're building credit, you shouldn't be paying annual fees.
My man Steve has an 850. He's the only person I know out of all the people who is under 35 with an 850. So that just tells you how amazing his credit is. So another thing that you kind of said I should talk about in the video is once you get that first credit card after that secure card, or you start to move from that secure card to put that minimum balance automatic.
The automatic minimum payment.
Automatic minimum payment. Okay.
Every credit card you ever get, the first step you do is you add your bank account information and you set up to pay the automatic minimum payment. Now, with that being said, you always want to pay your credit cards off in full.
Right.
You never pay interest on a credit card. That's no way to build.
Yeah.
You will never accumulate wealth paying interest on a credit card.
For sure.
But the first thing you do is you set up that minimum payment. Now, what that does is, say you owe $100 and you forget about that credit card, your minimum payment might be $35. They'll take that $35 and apply that payment. Now, you're still going to get charged interest on the rest of the $65, but you avoided making a late payment to your credit card. Late payments come with fees, and they get reported to the credit bureaus. A late payment that can be on your record for up to 10 years, I believe. I've helped friends in the past start to build their credit. They go out on their own. They open the credit cards. First thing they do is forget to set up the automatic minimum payment. I've had a friend that makes $100,000 a year miss a payment that was $30, and it gets reported to the credit bureau. So now their on-time payments are 99% for the next X amount of time,
Right.
because it takes a long time to wipe out that.
Right.
Your on-time payments has to be 100%. It's one of the most important factors in your credit score.
Right. And so you tell me like what you told me. It's better to pay the minimum balance on your credit card and overdrafting your account.
You're better off overdrafting your bank account. Because what's an overdraft fee? $32, whatever it is.
Yep.
Later down the line, the amount that'll hurt your credit score, you'd be wishing you could pay $32 to get your credit score back to where it was. When you start building, when you start seeing 650, 700, 750, and you get to hit with that late payment, you drop down to 600. You know,
Yeah.
you're gonna wish you had that minimum payment set up.
That back, yep.
And I mean, you could get into financial advice of just always making sure you keep a minimum balance in your bank account,
Right.
so you can cover those minimum payments. But I always set up the minimum payment.
For
so
sure.
important, so important.
For sure. That's a great tip. So, you know, as you start to build your credit, you had talked about a few other things like, you know, as you build your credit, the importance of credit, like how you talked to me about the difference between 1% on a house.
Yep.
Talk about that. Like,
Yeah, so people don't realize how important the credit score is. They don't realize the impact it can have on their lives. Well, we just did some math earlier. We compared a $200,000 mortgage over a 30-year at 4.5%, and I think ended up by the end of your loan you'd pay $365,000, $165,000 in interest. That's almost twice as much as what you paid originally.
right.
Now that's normal. That's what people pay. It's
Right.
a part
For
of
a
the game.
30-year fixed mortgage.
So
Yep.
then we did the same math at 1% higher, $200,000 mortgage, 5.5% interest rate over 30 years. The total came at $410,000, which is now you're talking $210,000.
Right.
That's $55,000 more over the course of 30 years. I mean, that's a lot of money.
With just 1%.
1% difference on your mortgage.
So Steve had also talked to me about, you know, I gave the list of how they evaluate on your credit, but in that list I didn't tell you the importance. Some things are more important, and like your payment history. That's 30%. You know, more of important. You explain it a little bit better.
Yeah, so there's all these factors that PJ went over in his last video, but some of them will weigh a lot heavier than others. Your credit utilization, your on-time payments, your derogatory marks. Those are going to weigh a lot more than stuff like your number of hard inquiries, your type
Yep.
of accounts, your length of credit history. I mean, some of these things, even at my age, I'm 32 now, it's hard for me to have a high average length of credit history.
Right.
But in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter as much because my on-time payments are 100%.
Yep.
My credit utilization's always 1 to 2%.
Right.
PJ said 30%, the lower the better.
Right.
I always say if you can get it down to 0, you want it at 0.
That's true. So that's true. So that's something that I didn't touch on in the video yesterday, but it's very important because certain factors matter more and have a much heavier weight on your credit scoring than other ones. And I didn't kind of give that, but yesterday Steve had called me and said, okay, these are important. Okay, another thing I talked about yesterday was piggybacking, and which is a great thing, but now Steve is going to go into depth a little bit more about it, the benefits of it, and some of the negative things that can come with that.
Yeah, so piggybacking is a great tool. I've used it for a lot of my friends. I've helped build a lot of credit scores that way. But there are some risks that are involved with piggybacking. PJ said, well, does the person that's piggybacking on my account, can they affect my credit? So if I added PJ as an authorized user to one of my cards, what he does will not affect my score. However, when I add him as an authorized user, they are going to issue me a credit card that says PJ Hill. If I give him that card and he goes and uses it, I'm responsible for that money. So you got to be careful when you're doing the authorized user of the piggyback system, because if I give him that card and he spends money and I can't pay it back, now my credit score is dropping when I was originally trying to help him out.
Right.
There can be adverse effects to that.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. So, piggybacking is good, but there is some adverse effects. If you give them that credit card, don't do that. You kind of use it. So what do you usually do when you piggyback somebody?
So when I'm piggybacking someone, I'll find out what they're trying to build their credit for, make sure it's something worthwhile,
Right.
make sure they got a good vision, make sure they're responsible with their money. I don't want to open up a line of credit for somebody that's going to go abuse it. So
Right.
with that being said, I'll add someone to one of my cards that I've had open the longest that I know carries a zero balance on it. So as soon as that gets reported to the credit bureau with them as an authorized user, for example, if I added you to my Discover card, it's one of the first cards I had. I've had it for over 10 years. I got it when I was 20 years old. So the minute that gets added to you as an authorized user, you pop up. Now all of a sudden you have 100% on-time payment for the last 10 years. You got my credit utilization. I have a credit limit of $30,000 on that. So if you were maxed out if you had one credit card and it was $1,000 and it was maxed out, the minute you inherit my $30,000, now all of a sudden that's pretty much a drop in the lake.
Right.
So it can help. There's a lot of ways that it can help. And you only get mirrored for that one credit card that I added you as an authorized user.
Right.
So you don't inherit my whole credit. You just for that one credit card, which you can do multiple credits. It's a good way to skyrocket your credit score up.
Right. Now, one thing we want to touch on when you do the piggybacking that I didn't touch on in my video because it was a little bit shorter, this one's more lengthier, is, underwriters can see that you've been piggybacked, that you piggybacked and got your score up. So, it's not just saying like, oh, now I got a 750 and that you're going to be able to get a car loan or you're going to be able to get a certain credit card. No, your credit score has built, but they can see that like you built your credit score by piggybacking.
Yeah, piggybacking gets you in the game.
It gets you in the game only.
It starts your credit. It can get you a jump start.
Yep.
And it can allow you to get different credit cards. It can help you move in that apartment building.
Yep.
It can help you with some stuff. But if you think that your credit went from 600 to 750 and now you're going to walk in and buy a house, the underwriter from the bank is going to say, hey, you don't actually have any proven history of your own. How is your credit score so high? They're going to see right through the piggyback.
Right.
So you have to, it's a good starting tool, but it doesn't get you to the finish line.
Right. All right, so in conclusion, Steve, what would be your advice for people who are using their credit card and building their credit, or have credit cards, and what would be your advice to people trying to build their credit?
You have to have a goal, and you have to realize that it's a long-term thing. Your credit's not going to go up overnight. There's a lot of stuff that takes time to build. And so you got to be diligent about it. You got to be responsible with your credit. Right. You got to realize once that money opens up to you, don't go spend that all right away. You have to realize, don't spend beyond your means. You should be paying that credit card off every month. I mean, they're going to give you that line because they want you to fail. The banks make money when you fail. If you're paying interest, they're making money.
For sure.
So you want to be smart. You want to make sure you're not spending beyond what you have. You want to pay that credit card off every year or every month. And you also don't want to be scared to use credit, though. You have to it's a good tool. There's a lot of cashback rewards you can get.
Right.
There's a lot of benefits to using credit. I never use cash. I never use a debit card. I buy everything on a credit card, and I go on free trips because of it. That's more advanced credit card usage, but don't be afraid to use the credit,
Right.
I gave PJ an example earlier. I was at back to school shopping for my daughter, and I walked in Justice, and they offered me 30% off if I opened up a credit card at over 800 with a ton of established credit history. I opened up the credit card for 30% off.
Yep.
I paid that off. I got the discount, and now I'm gonna close that credit card. And that won't have a blip on my score because I've put my time in and I have the credit score that's solid.
Right.
So you can't be afraid to use credit, but you have to realize what your end goal is. If you're trying to buy a house, if I was trying to buy a house tomorrow, I wouldn't have opened up a credit card at Justice to save 30% on some back to school clothes.
Right.
You got to know what you're doing. You got to think big picture, and you got to work towards your goal.
So there you go. You heard it from one of the best people I know in this credit game who has built his credit to unbelievably high, 850, and is incredibly young. So it can be done. Those are just some more in-depth tips that I didn't give in my quick video, but this follow-up video should get you all the way, not only to the finish line, but past there if you plan accordingly.
We can do another video for when you really want to. When that credit score gets high, you can start to do some fun things.
Coming.
We'll cover that later.
That's coming. Well, thank you, brother. Man, I appreciate you, my
you,
guy.
man.
Well, it's your boy, Simply P. All I can ever be is me. Until next time, peace.
If you have questions, send them to PJ. We'll get back to you.
Yes, he said he'll get you right. So drop a comment below if you got any questions. Hit me up with the questions. I'll forward them to my man, and he said he'll respond to all of them. He wants to help.
Definitely.